2.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Lunchtime Chat hosted by NAMI Pasco and NAMI Hillsborough. I'm Natasha Pierre, Vice President of NAMI Hillsborough, and we also have Debbie Prue, who is the Executive Director of NAMI Pasco. Today with us, we have Stephen Sundquist. And thank you so much for being with us, Stephen. We're grateful to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be had on this show.
Well, let's start off with you telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm a licensed intervention professional, so I conduct interventions on cases that, the family needs a little extra help to get their loved ones into treatment. I also work as a business development representative for Clean Recovery Centers in Newport Richey and Tampa, Florida. I've pretty much dedicated my life to helping others ever since I overcame my own addiction and mental health struggles over the years. I realized the one component that I knew I had a purpose with was connecting with others. And that has given me my purpose over these last few years.
Okay, thank you for sharing. You mentioned addiction. How has your life been impacted by addiction?
Ooh, well, it started at the age of 15 years old when I had my first encounter with alcohol. My first drink was 7 shots of Everclear. And ever since that night, I found out that people liked when I was drunk. So I felt like I had to live up to this expectation of being the life of the party ever since that. And after blacking out, all the stories that come along with my first drink, I did it all over again the next night, completely kind of disregarding what had just had happened the night before, being so sick, throwing up, urinating my pants, the whole nine. And ever since that, it began to become a weekend thing. It was a weekend warrior, in high school, 15, 16 years old, wanting to be the center of attention. And, eventually through the years, I dabbled in other drugs, marijuana, cocaine. And then the age of 17 years old, I had a surgery to my elbow. It was a baseball-related injury, and I got prescribed pain pills. And the way the pain pills made me feel is that nobody could touch me. I was invincible, really. And I realized that I could show up to school high and drunk and nobody would notice. At least that's what I thought. So throughout the next 6-7 years of my life, I was chasing that first high that I had when I was 17 years old, and I almost died trying to get it. Several treatment centers later, going for the wrong reasons, going for my families, or going to get, things back in my life. It took a lot of time for my life, and I don't regret any of it because it's made me who I am today. I think God has a plan for each one of us, and I think my plan was designed exactly how it was laid out for me, and I understand my purpose today, which has always been to help other people. I just never experienced that until I did in 2017 when I overdosed twice within a 24-hour period. That was my last use, March 1st, 2017. I was found in my car around 3 p.m. on a Friday. I had picked up some stuff. I did it while I was driving, and I passed out at the wheel, went through an intersection, did not hit a single car, and I ended up in a bush. And someone called the cops, and thank God they did, because I don't know if I'd be on this video call with you guys today talking about my story. But it was a very traumatic experience. And, all throughout my years of addiction, I never thought that this would happen to me. I know a lot of other people think alike, and, you never know. You never know when that bad batch is going to be the one that kills you, or, whenever your tolerance gets to a certain point, people think they can handle more. And especially with the stuff that's on the streets today with the fentanyl, you have no idea what you're getting. So I overdosed, and I was revived by Narcan. Thank God for that. That stuff saved my life. And I was brought to the hospital, and within a few hours I was released, and I had my roommate come pick me up. And the crazy story here is that my roommate had a night job. He worked the night shift, and he brought me back to the apartment around like 5 o'clock. And he said he was leaving for work. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to go do the stuff that had just killed me like 3 hours prior. It makes no sense today, but as an addict in your active addiction, whenever you're focused on just getting the next one, you're going to do that stuff that just killed you, because technically that's the good stuff. It's sick, but that's how an addict thinks, you know, because once you, like I said, I was chasing that first high after all those years. So my roommate goes to work, and he goes to Tijuana Flats before he pulls into his shift for the night, and they gave him an extra order of food. So my roommate, being the caring, kind guy he was, he's decided to go back to the house and bring me his extra food that they accidentally gave him, which was from Tijuana Flats. They're a big part of my story today. So he comes upstairs and he goes to give me the food, but he finds me on the floor again, blue in the face. So he starts administering CPR, no pulse, no response. And he calls 911 again, and the same paramedic crew actually came out and revived me again with another 4 shots of Narcan. So part of my amends today with paying it forward, I tipped Tijuana Flats very heavily for giving my roommate some extra food. But I actually got to make amends with the paramedic crew who saved my life that day. You know, it was an opportunity that I thought that they would appreciate, you know, was just to say thanks, really. So I reached out to them on Facebook, and I got a response from the chief of fire in Boynton Beach, and I reached out to the Station 3 that saved my life, and I got to meet all the crew that day in person, and it just brought tears to everybody's eyes. You know, it was such a beautiful experience. I got to take a picture with them, and that actually allowed them to post. I told them it's okay, because I realized at this point in my life, with my past, what I've been through, the one thing I was always fearful of doing was sharing it with other people and letting people truly know what I had been through, which is very common with addicts and alcoholics. That's why it's so important to share your story, because we think that we don't have anything to offer people, but we do, because we've lived it. So whenever I told them that it was okay to share my story, they posted it on their Facebook page, and it created a bunch of buzz in the area, and the news station got a hold of me, and I was so fearful. The interview's terrible, by the way. I think I showed Natasha it before. I was all over the place. I was like 3 months sober, never had a camera on me ever. I had such a fear of public speaking, which I still do, but I'm comfortable with it because I'm passionate about this line of work and being able to help the next person in line. So yeah, it was a freeing experience, really, to let my story be known and let the world know who I truly am with no regrets.
So Stephen, would you say that overdosing twice in a 24-hour period, would you say that was your rock bottom at that time?
Yeah, I would say that was what did it for me. I had experienced some other physical bottoms with losing vehicles, you know, losing jobs, losing friends. But this bottom was so emotionally draining, because I was alone using at this time of my life. I was going to work. I don't know how I was holding a job down, but it talks about it in the big book of recovery, with having periods of sobriety, thinking you can manage your own life again, and it always going back down the drain until you're either dead, in jail, or in rehab. Thankfully, I've never been to jail, so that wasn't a part of my story. But I almost lost my life. But I think that was definitely my bottom, because I knew I didn't want to die. As much as I would have told you, yeah, I'm okay with dying, I didn't want to die, because I didn't want to leave that burden on my family. I didn't want people to remember me as an addict. I wanted to leave a legacy, really, and I plan to do that today.
Awesome. What would you say the mental health component is to your addiction and recovery?
So I think that's a great question, because I feel like that's where most addiction stems from mental health disorders, with PTSD, trauma, depression, anxiety. You know, I have stories I can tell for days about my anxiety, depression, PTSD from, you know, abuse as a child, sexual abuse, you know, all that. And unless that stuff is addressed, the addiction's not going to change. Because in my experience, the drugs and the alcohol were just a symptom of my disease, which lies within myself and how I view myself, how I view others, and basically the self-esteem portion of everything that has to do with me. So I think it's prevalent in most people, actually, that it goes untreated. And that's why I figure, I think that they continue to go back out and use, and they go do more research until they're either back in rehab, if they're lucky, they're dead, or they end up in jail.
When it comes to addiction, Stephen, what would you say are some of the misconceptions that people have on what an addict might look like, or a person who is in active addiction? What are some of those misconceptions?
I love to talk about this. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about addiction is that it does not discriminate. There's no age, sex, religion, color, anything. It does not care what you look like, how much money you have, where you come from. Addiction will affect anybody at any time. With that being said, it does seem to be more prevalent in the lower economic areas, but it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't just affect the person that's homeless under the bridge. It will affect the CEO, Fortune 500 company owner. It'll affect the teacher, the school worker. I mean, the athlete. In my situation, that was my story. I had everything set up for me to play baseball at the next level, and my addiction took a hold of me before I even realized what was going on. And all of my dreams moving forward were kind of shattered because I had this newfound love for taking pills every day. And once I lost baseball, I lost myself. And that's where the mental health piece really started to rain down on me, with the depression, isolation, the PTSD, all the stuff that I had never shared about throughout my life. The other misconception is that addiction is a choice. I believe that it can start out as a choice. I believe drug use can be a choice. However, whenever it crosses that threshold, whenever you become dependent upon it, that's when it becomes a disease. And I believe it's a brain disease, because you have no control at that point. Whenever you cross that threshold of, okay, we're doing this as fun, until it becomes an everyday routine where you crave it, where you're chasing that. And that's what I can talk about. Whenever it starts to affect your morals and what you do to get drugs, and whenever you're stealing from your family, you can't control it. And like I come from a great family, and my plan wasn't to be a drug addict. That wasn't part of the plan. I had a college fund set up. My parents are somewhat successful people, and I had my life set up for me. I just got caught up in making a couple wrong choices that led to an addiction.
Okay, how long have you been in recovery, and who or what has kept you there?
So I've been in recovery since March 1st, 2017. I've been trying to get sober since probably about 2011. And over the periods of me entering into treatment, I progressed a little more each time. So the thing that's different about me is that I never stopped fighting. As much as I did not do what I needed to do each and every time I went in and out of treatment, I always gave it a shot, somewhat at least. What helps me today, and I still do this, prayer is such a big, important part of my routine. Prayer, morning and nightly prayers. Praying for other people, not just my selfish needs. It's, it goes something like, God, how can I be the best version of myself and be in service to the next man in line today? Something like that. Staying connected with others, sponsoring other men in the program of AA, which I got sober in, completing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and passing it forward in the 12th step. And that's the most important step that there is, in my opinion, because I can't keep what I have unless I give it away. And the other way I like to look at it is, I'm still on the baseball field pitching. I'm on the mound. I still got my starting lineup behind me. I got my shortstop, my second baseman, my third baseman, my first baseman. And I trust all these guys to make the play behind me, just like I do in my life, being the starting pitcher on the mound. I have my starting lineup behind me, my guys in my corner that I can call for advice, suggestions, for help. They'll be there like that. And I've never had that in my life. Most of my friends growing up were friends that only wanted something from me, or it was vice versa if I wanted something from them. You know, I've met some of the best people in sobriety today because I can actually count on them for anything that I need at any moment.
You mentioned your family and your parents. You know, can only imagine that it was hard for your parents to witness and to watch you
Mhm.
live through addiction and really be almost powerless to help.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to parents who has a child that's dealing with addiction? What would you want parents to know?
So I would say to stop enabling immediately. Give them an ultimatum. If they don't want to go out, if they don't want to get the help, you have to cut them off financially, through the home. I mean, you have to put something in play to set boundaries because my family tried that, but my mom was an enabler. My dad, it was a very toxic relationship. My parents were the type of people that would come into my room every 30 minutes on shifts just to make sure I was still breathing. You know, I know addiction affects the whole entire family just as much as it does for the individual or the addict that's going through it. But if there's no tough love, it's going to take much longer for them to even get the help. And that's my experience. You know, my parents finally got fed up after dealing with it for so long, and they just cut me off. And it was tough. I probably called them every name in the book, but that's what I needed. You know, and I didn't learn anything until there was tough love, until there was boundaries set, until they told me that you can't come back home unless you're sober, or you can't have that car because you're not paying for it, or the cell phone, or whatever it is. There's got to be something behind. You know, if you enable your child to continue to live under your roof, you're not doing anything.
Now, how about for somebody who may be watching today who's struggling with addiction? What message do you have for them?
I would tell them that, you know, if you're anything like I was, now's the best time to get help. There's never a time where all the stars aligned for me. It was like, oh, today's going to be the day I'm going to go get treatment or I'm going to get some help. It never happens like that. Every time I've gotten help, it's been a divine intervention, something that I can't control, that has caused me to get the help. And I'm so grateful for those experiences. But I would tell them, you know, listen, there's such a better way out there. I never thought this could be my life, you know, but here I am a few years sober. I have a great job. I have a family today. All these things are possible in recovery that were never possible for me. All I had to do was just make that one phone call just to get the process started and just to be a little bit vulnerable with another person, just to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Can you help me?
Wonderful. Well, Stephen, for people who are watching and may want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Sure. So I can give you my personal cell phone number, which is 727-459-6362, or you can find me on Facebook. My full name is Stephen, Stephen. Last name is Sundquist. It's Sundquist.
And you mentioned earlier that you are an intervention professional. So
Yes.
you're the person, you know, when we see on TV that the family has staged an intervention, you're actually that guy.
Yeah, and the intervention itself is probably the least amount of work. There's a lot of work that goes into these pre-planning, getting everybody on board, understanding the family dynamic, you know, any other addictions within the family. It's a lot of work on the front end.
Wow. Thank you so much for being with us. We really, really appreciate you sharing your story, sharing your personal and professional expertise, and we appreciate it. For everyone else, stay tuned for another edition of the Lunchtime Chat.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank